Adam Goldstein has dropped a massive statement in a recent interview we're going to break down, where they're differentiating themselves straight away from Joby Aviation. We all have been focusing on the commercial air taxi side of the business, and we've kind of turned our back to that defensive side. We've been talking about this in the eVTOL fan club, and we're going to break down this interview to see exactly what Adam has said and what this means for achr Aviation. Guys, I'm currently trying to get all my interviews in place at the moment. We have Hover coming back on, hopefully. But if you want us to interview Adam Goldstein, please, more than ever, bang that like button and say in the comments, interview Adam. The more comments we get, the easier it is for us to get the interview. Right, so let's get straight across to X to see exactly what has happened before we break down the interview. So I've dropped this post today, whereas achr Aviation CEO Adam Goldstein thinks defense, not air taxi, could be its front and center business. Now, me and Reese spoke about this very early on when they got that partnership with Andrew to develop the hybrid vertical takeoff and landing midnight. But what I've said here is Adam has put defense as a major focus on achr's revenue generation. The government does pay big money for military contracts, and achr are developing and selling, and that's an important part. They're selling the hybrid VTOL straight away to Anduril. Anduril are experts at securing these contracts, and it does de-risk achr having to hold on to these aircraft as they realize the revenue straight away from Anduril. So as soon as they sell their hybrid midnight to Anduril, they get the money for it. And then I asked, are you more bullish on the military or the commercial side of achr Aviation? But that's not what you came here for. You came here to find out exactly what Adam Goldstein said. So that's what we're going to jump into next. So he has done a recent interview with Sherwood. And if you haven't, make sure to check them out. They're on my X page there. But we've seen achr Aviation CEO Adam Goldstein thinks defense, not air taxi, could be its front and center of the business. So we're going to skip a little bit of the introduction. We get straight into the interview. So Sherwood News said to Adam, you announced the completion of the test flight in Abu Dhabi earlier this month. Break that down. I'd love to know how transferable the lessons that you get from flying in Abu Dhabi are when you're thinking about LA or New York or Miami. Now, we've heard Mark talk about this. The likes of flying in hot weather is a lot harder on the aircraft than cold weather. Me and Reese very early on thought cold weather would be a much harder effect on a aircraft. Now, the only caveat here is we're talking about electric aircraft. Now, cold weather will affect the batteries, and that's the only thing we got to think. But then if we're thinking about the Anduril and the defensive side, these are not the ones being tested in Abu Dhabi, but these are going to be hybrid. So just keep that in your mind. So Adam Goldstein turned around and said, any of the operational lessons are certainly very transferable. I'd actually say probably most things that we do will be super transferable over there. With some of the big differences being weather, it's very hot and harsh over there. No matter how much air conditioning you have, if you open the doors and it's hundreds and whatever degrees outside, the air all goes out. It's all the lessons of being hot. We don't really have that climate in the US or in the West that are consistently like that. It definitely helps us from that standpoint. And guys, this is why it really is important that heavy testing in the likes of Abu Dhabi. Because if they want to enter that market, but not only that market, we have the likes of the north of Africa. These are all very, very similar conditions. So once they get it pinpointed down then, and they know the aircraft can work ideally, then we're in for the money. So with Abu Dhabi, it's early. There's regulatory leaning, there's capital, there are people that want it, and there's a society that wants it. I think that's really great, and I think that'll help accelerate the rest of the world. In the latest test they did, Abu Dhabi just wanted to show a flight in front of the Grand Mosque. That was a big thing. They were like, put a plane up in front of the Grand Mosque, show the picture, and it'll be beautiful and prideful for the country. That's what they wanted, so that's what they did. But at the same time, what they're there for is to fly and learn in those conditions and ultimately try and launch the commercial operations there. The Sherwood interviewer came back with, can you help me picture stepping into a future LA vertiport? How big is it? And where in the city might it be? Is it on the rooftop like a helipad? Or is it on the ground level? Is it more like a mini airport or a lounge? It's hard to even imagine. And this response, I'm really, really excited for, because back, I'd say about 3 months ago, we were trying to bang together ideas. Are we going to use redundant vertiport or not vertiports? Are we going to use redundant helipads? Or are we going to create these modern vertiports? So Goldstein came back and said there are multiple variations of this. There was a vision that Uber had put out, that the kind of grand central of these things, sitting over the freeway so you're not taking up new real estate. It's going to take a while before these things come out there. The opposite side will be bus stop versions. All I really need is a 50-foot landing pad and a 50-foot safety area around that and a fence. That's really all I need. In some locations, you won't even need a fence like Texas. Now, that makes me really question, I don't know, the safety. If we think about an actual airport, these are going to be aircraft. So you don't want just any person wandering in, especially if there's no fence, and getting up close to one of these. As we all know, one accident, it doesn't matter which company it is, will pull down the whole market. It's going to be somewhere between those two. If you've ever been to a private fixed base operator or regional airport, they're just small, little check-in things, and there's not a lot of stuff in there. I think we'd want to provide more of an elevated experience than that. And this really does excite me, because I want Archer to market itself as a premium brand. We've seen that when Tesla came out. They weren't focusing on the absolute everyday people. Yes, the likes of the everyday people like us want to fly on Archer. But for actual profit margin, I would like them to focus on the high-end standpoint. And with that, you're not going to get it with just bus stop type vertiports. But the concept is not to spend your time in the takeoff and land location. It's to go and take off and fly wherever you want. For the Olympics, there'll be some big, amazing things that get built. I'm imagining the SoFi Stadium's vertiport is much nicer, bigger, and a lot more people can land there than some of the more bus stop type of things and outposts that will be out there. It'll be a mix. And if anyone knows Stan Kroenke, the CEO of LA Rams, he will have it absolutely pristine. This vertiport is going to be one of the best in the world. So it does make me a little bit worried that you'll then be landing in the likes of a bus stop, especially if you're paying for a premium experience. So Sherwood then said, and from a logistics standpoint and the user experience, when and how will customers be buying a ticket on a flight? And are the flights on demand, or are they a fixed schedule? So Goldstein did then come back and say the 20-year view is highways in the sky. And this is a big point, a 20-year view. I think some of us are running before we can walk. And I'm happy that Adam's not pushing out a 5 to 10-year plan, because I didn't believe that was going to be fully possible to have all these highways in the sky within the next 5 years. So I'm happy with that. It's super liquid. You don't need a seat. You just show up. It's like a sky ride. You hop on and you go from Orange County, to Santa Monica, and it's just no big deal. I think in the beginning, it won't be nearly that liquid, obviously. You'll need to book something, book a time, It's not that it'll be scheduled necessarily in the way United planes are scheduled, but more like every 10 or 15 minutes, you can take off and land whatever it is. And that's exactly how I thought they would start running. It would be like a metro service where every 15 to 20 minutes, you are getting on the next available midnight. I believe there will be big queues waiting. I don't think Archer will be able to keep up with the demand at the very start. But do you know what? We'll see how it goes. And you're going to need to know if there's going to be room or not, because there's going to be way more demand than supply we can give for a while. And that sort of reiterates my previous point. You're thinking about it from the consumer or user perspective. But if you think about it from the business perspective, you have a vehicle that's structurally better than helicopters, meaning it's safer and lower cost and quieter. If you start to think about cities, what's the 1,000th biggest city in the world by GDP or whatever metric? I don't know the answer, but I bet it's like Flagstaff, Arizona, or some city that you would know. And the question is, could you put 10 or 20 of these aircraft in the city? Hospitals use these vehicles. The pitch is so easy. You already use this thing. Do you want something that will literally cost you less but is safer? That's a pretty easy pitch. There's VIP stuff, there are tours, there are different types of emergency services, or the moving certain political people around. Can we put 20 aircraft in that city? Sure, I don't think it's a big deal to put 20. So you're like 20 times 1,000, that's 20,000 units, times 5 million. That's a big business. And we haven't even talked about the defense stuff yet. And this is where we start ramping up on that defensive side. So Sherwood says, speaking of defense, obviously air taxis are the primary pitch for Archer right now. But you're involved in defense contract, aircraft sales, and aviation software. How do you prioritize those revenue streams internally? So Goldstein says, the first defense aircraft we're building is going to be hybrid, and it's going to be an eVTOL product. We're going after the industry they call autonomous and attributable. I actually think the defensive side could end up being larger than the civil side, at least for the first 10 years. And this is a massive statement, but it shows Adam does have his eye on the ball because they want to generate revenue during this growth phase of the company. So I don't think of that as a side thing. I think that it could actually be the thing that's front and center. What's happening right now in the defense world is it started in Ukraine, and you saw the same thing in Israel, Gaza. Unmanned, low-cost systems are defeating expensive, centralized, in some cases, manned systems. They call it asymmetric warfare. The things that become scary about it is the advantage the West always had was that we could build the biggest gun, the biggest laser, the biggest weapon system. Now that's not really the thing that wins anymore. It's the volume of these low-cost things that you can put out there. And because the US does not have such broad, deep manufacturing as it used to have, and some of the adversaries have that, it puts us in a little bit of an upside-down scenario. The way that, let's say, the senior people that think through all this stuff look at our industry, it's like a new industry that has a big civil business, which means a lot of manufacturing capability, a huge market to go scale into, big new supply chains are getting built, and the product can be turned into variants to be used for the defensive side. In World War II, we made a lot of airplanes here, but we had companies like GM and Ford making airplanes. I don't really see that happening in today's world. You need new airplane companies doing that. So companies with big civil businesses, especially new businesses that can turn over and switch that into big defense businesses at certain key times, I think are going to be really important. And they look at us as one of those. We could build a variant of the product that we already built in the same factories that we already have that can scale up in the same way we're scaling up the civil side. If it comes a very big need for this, we're there to answer that. And I think it's pretty obvious that the West is going to need these solutions, these types of capabilities. It's sooner rather than later, just based on the conflicts that are pointing towards that. Sherwood then comes back with a very nice question. So defense could be larger for the first 10 years. Is it too far away to estimate when the civil air taxi business would take over? So Goldstein then said the civil side is substantially larger in its totality, right? In the near term, the defensive side could end up being larger because of the need. Everyone always asks, well, which will you do, civil or defense? Guys, I'm not going to lie, I was one of these guys that have been asking this question. Should they focus on civil or defense? So I'm really interested to know Adam's answer. One answer is, well, is one a good business and one is not a good business? And then two is, what's necessary? I view myself as a patriot, and if we needed stuff to defend the homeland, we certainly would be there to answer the call. Sherwood then says, that feels like a big statement, that you think defense could be larger than air taxis. Goldstein came back and said, think about it this way. Is an Abrams tank as useful today as it was pre-Ukraine? Call it 5 years ago. I would guess the answer is no. It's less useful as they're very vulnerable to attack. It's the same thing when you start to look at how many drones it takes to overwhelm one of these big, expensive systems. The answer is less than what you might imagine. If there's going to be a big defense shift into attributable assets, there aren't a lot of groups out there that can do what we do. We sit in a very unique spot to do this. Anduril is known for building products before they're even awarded contracts. We're going to show up to the competition with product. And these contracts are really very, very large. So it puts us in a very unique position. I think the $1 trillion defense budget in the US and multi-trillions all over the world will shift pretty quickly. And if you have assets and products to sell, I do think it will become a very big deal, especially if conflicts heats up. Sherwood then says, public trust is obviously going to be a huge part of the air taxi business. The defense sector can clash with the public opinion. What are your thoughts on that? Are you worried about building a consumer-focused business while also building this defensive side? Goldstein wasn't too worried at all. He said, every major original equipment manufacturer does that. Most of the planes are Boeing planes. Airbus does the same thing, as do all the suppliers. So I don't think so. I feel like the American flag was almost viewed as a symbol of Republicans, and it's become more of a symbol of America again, which is great. We're in California, and there are a lot of people here that are sensitive. It's kind of like a balance, though. So I think there's more patriotism. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But I would say no to that because everybody does it. It's pretty natural, but I think it's a good question. Sherwood then says, jumping to the consumer side, you've said that Archer wants to be mass market air taxi service, priced in the range of an Uber Black at launch. Midnight is reportedly a 5 million aircraft, right? Could you walk me through the model there? How does that work? So Goldstein says, first, we will sell the aircraft in the beginning. And if you think we'll make more money from the aircraft sales than the operations. But I can help walk you through why the math still makes sense. If you're in New York, an Uber Black costs probably $120 from Manhattan out to JFK. If you assume of the 4 seats, 3 are full, that's $360 per leg. It takes you 6 minutes to actually fly that leg. How many legs can you do in an hour? How many can you do per day? The vehicles are designed to do about 40 trips per day of a nominal mission like that. Knock that down to about 25 trips times 3 passengers times 120 per day. You start to do the math, and these vehicles are doing like 3 million to 4 million per year per vehicle in revenue. Then you look at the cost size of the equation. The pilot is fixed. The energy is basically free. It doesn't cost much at all to fly. The two big things at the end costing a lot of money are the landing fees and the maintenance. The maintenance should, especially in the beginning, be relatively minimal. Landing fees are the most unknown one because we have to convince the likes of the JFKs of the world, hey, there's not going to be 6 landings of helicopters anymore. There's going to be 5,000 now across the industry. So you have to start to look at the cost profile there, and it starts to look pretty good in the payback period of these vehicles. The vehicles last for 15 to 20 years. If you think about that, it's not really an expensive product anymore. The unit cost as a percentage of the total costs by a back of the envelope estimates is like 10%. Everything else is actually way more expensive. The pilots, the landing fees, and the maintenance. Sherwood then says there are absolutely astronomical projections for where this industry could go. Morgan Stanley projects there could be trillions of dollars in long-term potential. I'm curious, do you find those outlooks to be distracting to the day-to-day? Do you worry they might distort expectations or set expectations too high? I do kind of get where he's going with this question, because if we don't meet the likes of these trillion-dollar targets, is that going to get some investors to dip out pretty quickly? So then Goldstein came back and said, I think there's a group of people out there that want the future world to happen. And there's a big retail crowd that wants it to happen, and it drives excitement around this. It's not a money thing, it's a change thing. If you could fly instead of drive, if you're in New York and it was $60, $80, $100 to go to Hampton, to go to the beach, Jersey, Connecticut, or wherever you wanted to go, I just have to imagine that nobody thinks their life wouldn't be better if they had access to that. Anything that's encouragement of the industry, I would say, is great because it just brings more people. So I look at all the stuff as positives and I brush off to a lot of the negativity that's out there. When I talk to people, the only 2 groups of people I've ever met that don't want this to happen are 1, helicopter manufacturers, because those guys certainly don't like them, and 2, people from competitive companies or people invested in competitive companies. In the end, I think the product is better for everyone. The product exists. They're helicopters. It's just a more sustainable product. It's a lower cost product, so there's better equity story, and it's a safer product. Most humans will say they're a valuable asset in their time. If I can give you your time back, if I could give you a time machine, I would think that you would be very valuable to most people. So I like the people that encourage it. Yes, there are a lot of dreamers out there, but we're dreamers here too. Now, I think that was a very important interview because Adam has more or less confirmed that they will be doubling down on the defensive side of the business and making sure they retain revenue and keep that growing while the commercial air taxi business takes off. Guys, if you like interviews like this, make sure to bang that subscribe button. And we have seen Joby hit all-time highs. So make sure you meet Reese here next to find out, should you sell at this point?